G'day everyone, Paul here from Hobstar Computing Solutions and welcome to part 2 on how to do video editing with Kdenlive. This video is being recorded on the 1st of April 2023. No jokes about it though. We are using version 22.12.3 and this is actually being done from my book for the YouTube class of how to become a YouTuber. If you're following along with the book, this is from week 5, editing continued, which should be around about page 47. So I'm going to be actually reading from the book off screen here and following the instructions. They're the same ones that I use in class. We're going to start by actually setting up a Kdenlive environment. I personally like to use the effects layout. You can either choose it from up here in the top right hand corner, or you can go up to View, down to Load Layout and Effects. I've then gone through and actually found the places with my mouse cursor by moving it slowly where I can adjust the different areas. So I can adjust it this way and that way, so you can adjust things to your needs. We're going to be focusing first on the project bin and we're going to be adding in the project files. Now I've got this collection here, which are a collection of videos from places like Pexels, where you can get royalty-free music, sounds, images, all sorts of different things. We've also got Ben Sounds A New Beginning as some audio. I'm going to highlight all of these. There's a few different ways you can do that. You can left click and drag, as you can see with the extra cursor I have set up here. I could also click on just one of them, hold down the control key and press A for all. And then I can just drag any one of these into the project bin. Right there. Now there's a good chance that if you have a project already open and it's not quite set to the same video file size type, the resolution and the frames per second, that it will ask you to switch. I always just click switch. And there we go. You also saw it sort of processing each of the little videos. And you can click on any one of these and up here in the preview, press play and check out what the video is. This area is also where we're going to see things playing in our timeline once we put things in there. But you can preview your videos and your sounds before doing so. So what we have here is the sound file. We have a mountains video clip, which just as a little hint actually doesn't have any sound attached to it at all. And then the remaining clips all have the sound. And you can see those in the waveform here. And we go down to the next one. We have the waterfall, a pouring cup of tea, and some leaves with some rain on them as well. We're going to start by dragging the mountains and the waterfall clips from the project bin into our timeline. Our timeline is where we do all of our work. We have a V1 which is connected to the A1, and we have a V2 which is connected to the A2. And that'll make more sense in a moment. I'm going to start by bringing the mountains clip over to our timeline. And I'm also going to follow that up with the waterfall clip. And we can see as I put these down here, they're actually not quite sitting maybe as flush as they should. We have some gap here and we have some gap here. We can see on our timeline along the top here, this is where we can track how long the clip is going for. We can see that if I put my cursor over any part of this clip that isn't the corners, don't touch the corners yet, or the edge, I get this open hand icon. I can hold down left click, and as I do, you see the hand icon changes to a closed hand, and I can drag this to the left, but I can't drag it any further than that. I can then grab this clip and drag this to the left as well. I can now do what is called scrubbing, and I can actually grab the timeline cursor and drag it across, and I can check any part of this clip that I want to. I got a feeling this next part's going to be loud, so just a caution for anyone wearing headphones. I'm about to play the clip, and I've got a feeling the waterfall might come through a bit loud. So this clip's going to instantly transition to the next one. And yes, that was very loud. But we can fix that quite easily. Before we fix the sound, we're actually going to add a title clip to our video. So I can also click any point on the timeline and I can jump to that. I'm going to go sort of maybe here, just as a bit of an indicator. And I actually need to go up to Project and add a title clip. I'm going to call this one A Beautiful Dream. Obviously I've been using some very large fonts. That's probably a bit too big. All I did then was left clicked once, and that allows me to create a box where I can start typing. I can then come in over here on the right hand side, and if you've got my manual handy, I've got a lovely screenshot that outlines each of the different parts in here. But I'm going to do, let's say 120 maybe. That's a bit better. I think I can click once here and then I can drag this around. I can. This area here represents my full screen, and the additional red borders kind of suggest maybe you should keep things inside of that. Let's make this a bit smaller by actually changing the font to a different font type. We often want to pick something that kind of matches the theme of what we're doing, which can, take a bit of time when you have this many different fonts. Yeah, not quite what I'm after. Let's find something nice. I don't mind that one. Okay, so I'm going to drag that kind of maybe in the middle, see how good I am at doing that with just my eye. I'm going to pick a color. Now at the moment we've got sort of a white sky background and green trees, so white and green probably aren't going to do too good. Let's do something like a nice purple. I'm not the best at picking colors here, but let's go for something like that. We can also set things up like a gradient if you want to be really fancy. And we click the pencil to edit the gradient. I'm going to do that nice purple again as the first color, and then maybe something in the blues like that. And you get a little preview here and a preview here, and kind of see what that's going to look like. We can also set the angle. Yeah, you know what? Just a little bit of angle, sure. Okay, very nice. It's really easy to also add an outline. We currently have one that's 2 pixels wide. If I hold down Control and mouse wheel, I can actually zoom in and see how that looks a bit better. Let's leave that as black and make it just a bit bigger. You can also do fancy things like add a drop shadow, so it sort of creates an effect like it's sort of sitting off the video just a little bit. We might just turn those up. You don't have to do any of these, you can just do very plain text, but playing around with these settings is the best way to get used to using them. The one that I do almost all the time, and I might just zoom back out first, hold down Control and mouse wheel down towards me, is to actually make it centered, and then to make it centered the other way. So if you want it right in the middle of the screen, that's good. You can have it to the left, you can have it to the right, you can have it along the bottom. And you see it's not doing it to the complete bottom, it's sort of doing that inside box. I'm going to go centered, but actually I'm going to do top and have it at the top of the screen instead. There are quite a few other effects down here which we're not doing today. You can actually add special effects where it actually looks like it's coming in different ways. I'm going to click Create Title now that I've finished, and a little hint here, if you're using a computer that doesn't have as high a resolution as mine might, you can actually sometimes not see the Create Title button. What I normally have to do is bring this box down a bit and drag it up to be able to see the title. It might be sort of hanging off the bottom of the screen a bit. So I'm going to click on Create Title, and this actually adds it to my project bin. All the different bits and pieces you're going to be using need to be in a project bin first, so that's where it puts this one. I'm going to, just the same way I did with my mountains and waterfall clip, drag this onto, this time, the V2 channel. The way that these video channels work, particularly if you don't have any sort of connecting audio, is that they are layered. So because this one is now higher than this one, when it comes to this part of the video, the actual text will be above the video. Think of them like sheets of see-through paper, and we've written our words on there, and then we can just see on top of the other video. Very nice. Once again, a useful use of the scrubbing tool to drag through here. Okay, let's fix up the sound on the waterfalls here because that was a bit loud. To do this, we actually add a special effects. When you're in the effects viewing mode here, we have this list of all of the effects that can be picked and added to our projects. I like to use the search box here and just type in what I want. I always type VOL for volume. These special effects can actually be picked up and placed. You can only place them where it's appropriate. I'm going to place it onto the waterfalls clip. And if I actually come over here and zoom in a little bit, so I'm going to put my cursor here, hold down the Control and mouse wheel. You can also, just a quick side note, adjust the zoom down the bottom right here by clicking and dragging these or clicking them once or twice. It can be very easy to get lost inside of Kdenlive with everything that's going on, particularly when you have a longer project. So try zooming out and going back to the start if you get lost. You can kind of see the special effect here. Sometimes it'll actually say volume on it, but it might be zoomed out too far still. Because I've clicked on this clip, so one click, we can see, no, I need to click on the audio part, not the video, because these are actually kind of two separate parts to it. The audio for this clip now has this special effect. Now decibels are kind of tricky to understand. If I bring this over here just a moment, we can see that in track A1, which is the audio attached to the V1 video, so V1 video, A1 audio, these are connected. over here in the audio mix on the right hand side that it's spiking pretty high here. And spiking at -5, which still hurts my brain because 0 is like the absolute maximum sound level. I don't understand decibels, so please don't ask me. What I can tell you though, and I might put it up on the screen, is there are certain audio levels that you can mix to. You have usually maybe 3 separate things. You might have the sound effects of the video clip, you might have someone talking, and you might have some music as well. What I can say is we want to decrease this around about maybe -20-ish. So if it's up at -5, we need to go down about 15. So let's reduce this by 15, -15. And then I'll come back to here and press spacebar on the keyboard, or the play button here. And now we can see that's quite a bit lower. I don't know if it's low enough to hear my voiceover. Just want to point out that's now quite a bit lower. This can be a little bit fiddly, but have a go and then you can render your video and have a listen and see how it actually sounds. The next thing we're going to do is add the telephone in at the end of the waterfall. At the moment, the mountain clip comes straight into the waterfall clip. There is no transition between them. It's just a straight cut. We're actually going to make a cut between the telephone and the waterfall by having them overlap a bit. So let me come over here, and I might also just quickly add the volume to the telephone because the phone is very obnoxious, and I'm actually going to decrease it. That's probably even too much. Down to that for now. We can always come back and adjust these at any time just by clicking on them. That's the volume for the waterfall. Click on this one, and that's the volume for this one. Now, because the telephone is overlapping, much in the same way as the text over here is overlapping, when the video gets to this part, if you watch as I drag this along and scrub it just a little bit, as soon as it hits here, the telephone visually appears over the waterfall. We can actually still hear the waterfall and we hear the phone as well. So I'm just going to put it back to here for a moment and have a listen. Okay, now we're going to do something clever with this one. It is called a J cut or an L cut. I always get the two mixed up. And what we're actually going to do is, because you can see at the moment these are connected, when I move the video, the audio also moves. See there? We're actually going to disconnect them and then make the phone clip shorter. The idea is that in this video, which is a beautiful dream, we're having a lovely dream and then we get interrupted by the telephone. When you're watching TV shows and movies, you'll often, if you pay attention, notice that as a scene changes, you will hear the sound from the next scene, 1, sometimes 2, sometimes longer, number of seconds, before you actually see the video for the next part. I'm going to right mouse click on the telephone. I'm going to ungroup the clips. Control-Shift-G is a shortcut. I'm now going to cut this part of the clip off of the phone. To do so, there's a couple of different ways. One of the easiest ways is to put my cursor right at the edge here. I'm going to left click and drag, and it even kind of just jumped to there. It kind of had a guess that I wanted to do that, so it's pretty smart. It'll also try and grab to any sort of marker you have, so you can see there kind of jumps to that. So it's actually quite helpful. So the idea here is we're going to hear the phone before we see it now. Let's jump back to here and press spacebar. And then we hear it. The other thing we can do is we can add a very simple fade out on the clip here. I'm going to put my mouse cursor in the top right hand corner of the audio part of this clip. You see I get a red dot here. I'm not going to click it just yet. I can also do it here. So video and audio can have fades in and out. If I left click and drag this a bit like that maybe, let's try and line up with the phone. The sound of the waterfall should fade as the phone's ringing. It's very subtle, but that's not too bad. Now at the moment, these video clips are still not really doing a transition. We have one clip that goes directly into the next. There's no transition. This one is visually just doing into the next. We have a little bit of an overlap here with a fade. Let's actually add one and do a proper, nice, fancy transition. Let's go and grab the pouring hot tea, and we're going to put it down here. Now let's see what I've done here. I'm going to zoom in a bit, Control and mouse wheel. We have some overlap going on. The audio here is overlapping, but the video is not because we reduced this one after ungrouping it. You might also want to regroup things. If I then go and make a change to this, whoops, the audio is still down there. I'm just going to use Control Z Very handy for being able to undo the last thing you did. And if I have the phone selected, hold down Shift and left click, I can choose both the clips. They're now both selected. They'll both move together now. And I can right click and then group them back together again. We now have these overlapping. Now, because the phone is the one that's on top, you can hear the T there. So maybe we want to add the volume to that. I've still got it set up here. Often I use this one so much that it's often just sitting there. There you go. You can actually see the word volume keyframeable. It actually tells you the special effects, and we'll reduce that by, let's just say 16. Now, how can we actually get a nice visual transition between the telephone and the pouring of the tea? Well, in Kdenlive, it's actually super easy. I showed you before with my mouse cursor in the top right-hand corner that we get the red dot for adding a fade in and a fade out. We can actually put it at the bottom right-hand corner and click on the little the bottom left-hand corner, and we can give the little purple circle there a single left click to add a wipe transition. These are always called wipe for whatever reason. I don't know if there's some sort of industry term for that, but it's actually, as you can see up here in the special effects, is actually going to be a dissolve. So it's just a normal one. Now let's just take this back a moment and we'll press spacebar to see how this looks. That looks pretty good. Let's actually use our technique of scrubbing. We can either drag this back here, or I can left click here and just start dragging. We can see here, we can see half the telephone and half of the T. Very nice, simple transition. Now, if this ever looks jumpy up here in the preview pane, don't worry. Once you render it, it all comes out nice and smooth as butter. Now, this transition, although it is nice, it is kind of boring. If I actually make sure we have this special effect selected by left mouse clicking on it once, come up here to the effect composition stack, we can do some cool things. Let's change it from dissolve in the wipe method to, scroll down the list here. There's one here that might look nice. I think it's curtain. Yeah, this one actually looks kind of nice. Let's do this. Oh yeah, that comes in nice and fancy because it kind of matches with the sound and the T. I like that. There's some other special effects we can do really simply here. Some of these can end up with some rather odd results. So just remember what it is by default. At the moment, it's not inverted and it is reverted. Try and get your head around that one. If I take off the revert, we get kind of a reverse effect. So it's, yeah, and that's not going to work. There's some effects that might. Let's put that one back on and include the invert. That kind of looks cool too. It's going up instead of down. I think the original way is fine. Yeah, I kind of like that. Our final video clip that we have here is the watching rain. So we're going to drag this one. And once again, let's do a nice transition. And if I kind of just drag it to the side here, it kind of moves me down a timeline, which is kind of handy. And I'm just going to do a bit more of an overlap, sort of ish, what we have here. Sometimes you might want an exact amount of time, and you'll have to play around with that one. You can have a look at the timeline, and there's other ways to cut as well, which we might go over in just a moment. But actually, we are going to need to go over them once we add some music to our project as well. So now that we have these two overlapping, last time to do a transition on that end, it was down this corner, but now it's right here. You need to get it right in the right position. And this can be quite tricky to get it in just the right position. So a little bit of practice, a little bit of mouse skills. Get the little purple dot, give it a click to add the transition. If you're having some trouble with clicking on that little tiny purple thing, I can actually just remove this and show you that you can right click and go just at the bottom here, insert composition wipe. So if you're having trouble clicking that tiny little shape there, you can do that as well. Once again, let's come over here. Ooh, we should adjust the audio first, shouldn't we? All our clips are a bit loud. Drag them into there. Click on it to select it. We'll turn it down a bit. And then come back to our special effect. So as you can see, any effect that you click on here will be shown up here. And then you can edit the things that it can do. Let's go instead this time to cloud. And this is actually a good one where you can play around with the invert and revert. Let's actually see how that looks. It's quite fast though, wasn't it? If you want it to be slower, you need to have more overlap. So if I drag this down further, and then I can click on the effect, and I can drag it as well. Look at that. Get the two-headed arrow, you can drag it around. Let's see how that one looks now. see the effect takes longer to happen. If I choose to revert this instead, then it comes from the outside. Yeah, that doesn't work. What about if we invert it? And it's creeping in from the outside. So two very different effects there. It's creeping in from the outside or spreading from the end, from the middle. So I think I'm going to leave that on, maybe on the invert. Make sure it looks alright. Yeah, I quite like that. Now I'm going to zoom out for a moment. I'm going to hold down the control key and roll the mouse wheel towards myself. And just, if you feel like you're really lost, just look at the timeline. 0 is at the start, so we can always just go back to there. If you have one of your clips selected, you can press home to go to the start of that clip, or control home to go to the start of the project. If I click on here and then go somewhere else, like over here, pressing the home key still works, and control home also still works. I have found sometimes if I'm in some things it won't move, so if you're having troubles, just click inside your timeline somewhere. Speaking of the timeline, at the moment we have V1 and V2, which is connected to the A1 and the A2. The next step we want to do is to add some music to our whole project. Now at the moment, if I try and bring this song, which is fairly long, I can put it here. I can't put it over here because it's too long. It would override the other sound under here, which isn't going to work. Oh no, what do I do now? I can actually just drop this back over here. No, I can't. I can click on that and press delete then. I thought I could drag it back in. Never mind. Now let's add a new audio channel. I don't need the video. We can just add just an audio channel. What I do is I go down here, and anywhere pretty much in here, I can right mouse click, select insert track, and it's pretty smart because I clicked on an audio. It says, hey, do you want just an audio track under the A2? Which is exactly what I want. I want a new audio track here. You can also name your tracks. And we haven't done this yet, but this can actually be quite handy. Let's call this one music and click OK. And now we have a new track called A3 music. We can also go through and name our other tracks here. We can just call this one video sounds. But because we've got the multiple layer, these are also video sounds here. Let's call this one B, video sounds A. Call this one, it's like you need to double click, movie A, movie B. You don't have to go through and name these. If you've got many tracks, you might want to name them. You might have 2 or 3 extra video channels just to put your title clips in so that they're sitting separate from other things. There's many different ways to do this. Now that we've got the extra audio channel in here for the music, I can come over here to our project bin and grab the Ben Sounds A New Beginning audio into here. And when I hit the next channel, we can see it's got all the room in the world to fit. I want it to sort of start at the start of the clip, so let's make sure it touches up against here. And as we'll see though, it's a lot longer than our actual clip is. And I'm going to show you 2 different ways to make that fit our project better in just a moment. I'm going to start by, did you guess it, adding a volume keyframeable. I do this a lot because I find the audio that I'm working with is often very loud and I want to have control over all these things. This one's also very handy, adding it first before you make any sort of cuts. So if we wanted to make a cut here and here and we wanted to reduce the sound, if we have not added the keyframeable, then you'll need to add it to each of the different parts. And I've made this mistake before, so it's just a good one to know. Add in your big long music, add the keyframe volume keyframeable so that we can make our adjustments easier if we're making cuts along the line. Now I want this to actually come in a little bit quiet, sort of come up maybe here, maybe decrease before it gets to the waterfall and then sort of still exist, and then maybe at the end we'll make it go up. Often, things probably fade out on the way out, so let's have a play around with that. We've added our keyframe. We're going to reduce the sound of the whole thing a bit. And let's actually also, over here on the right, drag this across a bit. We can now see we have A1 sound, A2 video, A3 music, and the master, which is everything. So we have our 3 audio channels. So if I now press the space bar, it sounds a little janky. That's okay, kind of smooths out there. It will be fine once we actually render it. It's a nice piece of music. Okay, so that sounds pretty good. Let's get it so that the music kind of fades in sort of up to here. Let's go back to the start of our clip. And let's click on the sound for our music. We have our effects here. Now this timeline here actually represents the special effect that goes across the whole piece of music. So if I press spacebar to start it here, we can see a little head here moving along, a little timeline. So it's got its own little timeline clip. And we can see this because if I go over here, the music's still going. Over here, the music's still going. Over here. So this timeline represents the entire length of the whole clip. So going back to the very start again, I can also do Control Home. It has a marker at the start. We see a little diamond here. We're going to be focusing on the little diamond. Okay, you can see it goes for, let's say, about the first 5 seconds. And I'm going to put a new keyframe right here. These little things are called keyframes, and we can tell it to do things differently between first and the second. If you've watched my first video, we added a keyframeable effect on the piano in a little clip we made, and we actually used an RGB adjustment to have the piano change color. And we just changed each one of these, became a different thing. Now, one of the best tips I have for this is to actually set 2 points. I'm actually going to start it again and then put another one. And I don't know if I can zoom in on this. I can actually control mouse wheel and I can zoom in. I want it to go from that first keyframe, which I can't see now because I've zoomed in too far, which is going to be at -14. I'm actually going to make it less, which means I need to make it a larger number. Confusing, but get your head around that one. I'll zoom out a little bit. That's off quiet. It builds up. You can see the decibels are going up. And then at this one, it's going to be 14. And then after it, we can do something else. So this sets that one little part to be an upwards line. You can also see it down here on the timeline. It starts here and goes up. And then let's see how far we want it to go. I want it to sort of remain at that level until it gets to about here. So I'm going to have to zoom out on this one a bit. And we can drag this one across. And keeps going. That was too far. That went very fast. Draggy, up to about here. And then I want it to maybe go down again. Now, whenever I want it to change, it's good to have 2 separate markers. I'll try and explain why in just a moment. Let's get this back a little bit. And then I want another one right here, like that. And then this one is going to be the one that goes down. So let's decrease that to about -24 maybe. And for the rest of the clip, it's going to be lower than it was up at its peak here. So -14 there, -24 here. Can we still hear it? We can watch it over here on the music. That's actually pretty loud still with the waterfall. I might turn this one up a bit. We can also adjust them here. So once you get them in, you can also move them around. It does require some fairly precise mouse movements. That's not bad. Now, why did I do 2 points here? It's a little bit confusing, so just bear with me. At this point, it's -14. At this point, it's -14. So this is a nice straight line. By putting another one here, I can then make a transition from here to there. If I was to delete this one, I'm going to do this. I'm going to click on it, which also highlights it up here. Very useful. I'm going to find the remove button. That's where I am. That's previous. It's become a minus. And next, if I click the minus and remove that, it's now going to be a slight transition from here. It's going to fade all the way down to here. I don't get that nice straight line anymore. It's going to be progressively going lower from here to there. So rather than being nice and consistent and then going down, and this one took me a little while to work out. So if I now go back to here, you see it's slowly going down and down and down and down. And that's not the effect that I was looking for. It might be the effect that you're going for, but just be aware. I'll just do Control Z on that. If you want it to be consistent and then change, add in 2 points close to each other. If I want near the end, let's go over maybe here. We'll see, because I have this effects tool selected, we have the options for it up here. Let's add a new point here. Go forwards a bit, and then add another one. So once again, it'll be consistent from here to there. And then we want it to, normally I fade out, but let's go up instead to maybe -15 there. And we'll see it's now going up. and then maybe we'll fade out at the end. Now, I did promise you that I would show you how to cut this. It is quite long. We could grab it from the end, but there is another way. That's a good few seconds after the video is finished. Let's grab the scissor tool from here. So I call it the scissor tool because it's obviously a pair of scissors, but it's called the razor tool. We can switch between these two, and I do this quite a bit. So X is for razor. You can see the little letter in the brackets there, and we have S for select. Select tool is what we've been using the whole time. It's our pointer, it's the hand, it's pretty much anything you want to do. If we change it over to the scissors, we get this red line that follows the cursor around. Now if I click here, nothing happens. It says no clip to cut. If I put it on top of this one, trying to get the line up with the line there, and I left click, it's actually made a cut. I then need to change back to the select tool. Sometimes I'll leave it on the razor tool and then do this and then keep cutting it into smaller and smaller pieces. I now have this as a separate clip, so you can do quite a bit with that as well. I just want to delete this one, delete key on the keyboard, and to finish this project off, I'm going to add a transition, just a fade out. I'm not going to do that actually. I'll fade out on this bit, because if I fade out the audio, what's the point in making it go up? If I drag up the timeline here, I can also add a fade out on the video, which will look like this. You can kind of see why you would normally do an audio fade out. It seems kind of abrupt. Once again, there's so many different ways that you can edit your videos. I'm just going to mouse wheel back here. I might just do Control Home back to the start, and we can also add just a few little finishing touches. Now that we know about fade in, you can see here I can grab top left and I can make the video fade in. Let's see on the timeline, about there is 4 seconds, as you can see up there. That's about where we are, about 4 second fade in. These things can have fade ins too. So we can add a little fade in and a little fade out. What's interesting is, as you add more effects, each of them come up in the effect composition stack. So let's now press spacebar there. Text fades in. Text fades out. What if you want that to last for longer? Well, I can put my cursor at the end here, get the two-headed arrow and drag that out for longer. There we go. See, that waterfall still very loud, isn't it? I might do a little bit of a fade in, so it doesn't quite smack you in the face quite as much. That's a bit better, isn't it? And that's pretty much our finished clip. I do recommend going through and watching it all and looking for anything that you need to adjust. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to Project now that we're finished and ready to render our project, and go down to Render. I usually just make sure that it's set to MP4. That's a nice easy output. If you're doing fancier things, there are definitely other file types you can do. Let's check the other settings. Usually just prick render to file and go. I've been playing around with some of my settings for different things. I think that's all fine the way it is, and we're just going to click render to file. Now, because I never actually saved the project, which is a big naughty of me, I should have gone up to file. I can still do it now while it's rendering actually. I can go file, save as, and give it a name. My Beautiful Dream. And click save. Now, if I had have rendered it after I saved it, it would have called it My Beautiful Dream MP4. MP4s are good types of files to be able to upload to YouTube or anywhere else you want to send them to. Obviously, if it's too big, you can't just send it, via Telegram or via Signal or something, but you can upload it to YouTube quite easily. When it's finished, sometimes my Kdenlive reports an error that says that it didn't render it properly, but then if we go and watch the actual outputted file, it's absolutely fine. We can see that it's saving into my videos folder on my computer. yeah, that's something I need to look into. But if I open up my videos folder, and I might need to just refresh that. We have Untitled. Let's open it up. And there we go. There's our finished product. That goes on for a bit. And if we jump ahead here and just sort of see back there, everything looks lovely and smooth. And then cut. Yeah, once again, maybe should have done a better outro part there, but that's fine. Just wanted to demonstrate how to put these different bits and pieces together. If you found this video helpful, please do leave a comment down below. Let me know if there's something that didn't make sense, and I'm more than happy to try and explain it. Otherwise, thanks very much everyone for watching, and remember, with Hopstar Computing Solutions, never stop learning.
He is gay.
Although not as gay as this one. I got the gayest one. He's like, hey.
So gay.
Very gay daddy vibes. I'm so glad this is still recording. Make sure I edit that out.
Really?
Yeah.
It's still recording?
Yeah. It's easier just to keep recording and then come back and cut out what you don't need.
Are you going to say that?
No.
Aww.
I can if you want to.
No, not for the video.
Oh, for the audio.
Yeah.
We could.